I call to order this call meeting of the Coweta County Board of Education, Agenda 831, public hearing on intent to opt out of homestead exemption, 12 p.m., February the 11th, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Dr. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fourth public hearing on the intent to opt out of House Bill 581. Mr. Chair, since this is actually the fifth time that I've been through this presentation, I'll try to be a little bit more brief this time, and then have some comments to share with you there toward the end. Just a brief timeline, board members, on House Bill 581. We've been through this a few times. You can see February the 11th, we've got our fourth public hearing, and then at tonight's meeting, we'll consider a resolution on whether or not to opt out of 581. Just a reminder, no action on your part tonight means that we're in 581. Deadline is March the 1st for all the work to be done. Mike, if you go to the next one for me. You can see this is the ad that's run and the process that we were provided by the Secretary of State's office. It's very nuanced process, very detailed process that we've been through over the course of the last month or so. If you would, Mike, go to the next one for me. House Bill 581, just a quick summary. It was on the ballot back November 5th. It was designated at the time actually on the ballot as a statewide homestead exemption. Since then, we've received clarification that this is now classified as a local exemption. I'll get into more of what that means shortly. You can see there the verbatim ballot language. It does say statewide exemption that serves to limit increases in the assessed value of homesteads by which any county, consolidated government, municipality, or local school system may opt out of upon the completion of certain procedures. That is the exact language from the ballot. Just some other provisions there. It authorizes a special sales and use tax aimed at providing property tax relief. School systems are not eligible for that special sales and use tax. It does revise the assessment appeals process, and it requires an economic analysis by the Department of Audits and Accounts. Mike, if you go to the next one. Just some key dates. November 5th was the referendum. March 1st is the deadline. If you desire to opt out, you must have completed this process by March the 1st. Go to the next one, Mike. Process couldn't start before January 1st, must finish by March 1st. You have to have 3 public hearings. Today you're having your 4th public hearing. At least one of those hearings had to take place between 6 and 7 p.m. You've had 2 that took place between 6 and 7 p.m. And you can see there on the bottom that you had to publish notice of the intent to consider this in a newspaper of general circulation, which is the Noonan Times-Herald. Here's a map of the state of Georgia that was provided to me by the Georgia School Superintendents Association. Green are the counties that are considering opting out. Red are those that have notified that they're opting in, and the grays are undecided or undeclared. This was as of last week. A couple of things that are different, that apply differently under House Bill 581 to school systems. School systems are different than cities and counties. Our millage rate is currently capped at 20 mills. There is no millage rate cap for other local entities. I mentioned earlier that we cannot request an additional local option sales tax if 581 is enacted. That is something that cities and counties can do. Board of Education has a cap of reserves that they can hold of general fund reserves. It's limited currently to 15% under state law. That is a requirement that is specific to school systems in the state of Georgia. State of Georgia currently has $16 billion in reserves. Cities and counties can carry up to 100% in their reserve funds. Cities and counties can also levy an unlimited amount of mills to be able to do the things they need to do. But school systems are different. There are different rules for school systems. Last difference I'll mention to you, board members, that we just need to take into consideration when talking about House Bill 581 is that we pay a local fair share each year to participate in state QBE funding. That's the equivalent of 5 mills. I believe that number this year is $46.7 million that the Board of Education sends back to the state that is dispersed to other districts in the form of equalization. So you can see there are some definite differences there in the way the law is applied and rules are applied to school systems as opposed to cities and counties. Mike, if you'll go to the next one. Some potential outcomes of opting out of 581. 581, if you opt in, it's a statewide solution. So opting out would mean that the local Board of Education would maintain local control over school system tax policy. It would maintain flexibility for future boards. You would operate the way that you are now and have the flexibility to be able to make decisions that you think are best for Coweta County students. The ability to maintain a lower millage rate. Right now you have a millage rate of 15.41. It's the lowest in the metro area. It's the lowest in 43 years. There is some concern that if we were to opt into 581, that the millage rate would eventually have to be raised in order to meet our obligations. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. What I do want you to know is just last year, general fund budget increased $14.1 million last year. About $6.2 million were insurance increases, over $1 million for our contribution to the teacher retirement system. The state passed down much well-deserved raises for certain classes of employees. All of those were to the tune of about $14.1 million. None of those decisions were made locally. They were all a result of decisions that were made at the legislative level that we had to account for. So something that would restrict potentially revenue that you could bring in could lead to a higher millage rate. Opting in, there's a potential for higher property taxes in the form of a higher millage rate. Once that cap is reached, you diminish the flexibility of future boards and superintendents to be able to meet needs and to be able to innovate. I will mention about the millage rate. The millage rate cap is established locally. There is the possibility that, and it's happened in the state of Georgia, that local referendums be passed in order to remove that cap and put school systems on the same footing as cities and counties. Go to the next one. The long-term impact of 581, there's still a lot that's unknown about it. We do know that if it had been in place during the last fiscal year, or during this fiscal year, would have estimated loss up to $17.4 million. That's based on 8.11% digest growth last year, and the CPI was 4.10 last year. Still not sure on what index is going to be used long-term to define what the assessment cap would be. It's been discussion of CPI, but we still don't have clarity on whether it's going to be a regional measure, state measure, or national measure. So I still can't give you that definitively. Already mentioned local option sales tax. That loss can help local governments, but not school districts. Go to the next one, Mike. State revenue, it could make us more dependent on state revenue. I'll show you some graphs here in just a few minutes that show what has happened to the percentage of general fund budget that is state revenue over the last 20 or so years. Could be that local fair share, if you do opt out, local fair share continues to go up. It could be that could be more loss in state funding for us, and we'll just have to account for that. Also, QBE, Quality Basic Education Act, is not adjusted annually for inflation. Typically what we see is those inflationary increases are passed to the local district. each and every year because QBE is not adjusted for inflation. No considerations in 581 for enrollment growth. Very well could have a disproportionate impact on our school system due to the fact that 73% of our local tax digest is residential. I will mention to you, board members, when we're talking about tax digest and property reassessment, boards don't reassess. That's something that the tax assessor does. The board sets the millage rate for operation of the school system. Mentioned unfunded state mandates. I mentioned a few here just a few minutes ago related to insurance contributions. We've actually received information going into next year that insurance contributions are going up again. So we already know going into next year's budget that we're going to see $5 million more in expense for employee insurance going into next year if the state budget remains the same. Those dollars have to be accounted for locally. That's for non-certified employees, by the way. The state does fund a lot of the insurance contributions on the certified side, but on the classified side, we already know going in that we have to account for approximately $5 million in additional expense next year. Go to the next one, Mike. These are just some definitions here for you. I won't go through them again. You've seen these over the course of the last 4 or 5 presentations, so keep going there, Mike. We'll say as far as eligibility and automatically renewal, once a homeowner applies and they're granted the exemption, they keep the exemption. Also mentioned here, I know there's been some concern out there that if 581 goes in, what happens to my current exemptions? Homeowners keep their current exemption. If you have a senior exemption, a veteran's exemption, whatever that may be, the homeowner keeps those exemptions. Go to the next one, Mike. Historically, on the millage, I mentioned earlier, it's 15.41. It's the lowest rate in the metro area. It's the lowest in 43 years. Go to the next one, Mike. You can go on to the next one, Mike. This is just a chart that shows you how our millage compares to others around us. Mike, go to the next one. It's a line graph that shows millage rate. You can see the millage is the actual green line up at the top. I will call your attention to the red line at the bottom that shows debt. The school system has been debt-free since around 2003, 2004. Go to the next one, Mike. Just another chart that reflects the same. You can see there 2002, go back real quick, Mike. 2002, senior homestead tax exemptions were implemented at that time. They were expanded in 2020, and you can see the line there that shows what's happened with both the millage rate and the debt. Go ahead, Mike. Mention austerity reductions here. This is reductions in state funding. You can see that those began back in FY 2003. Around FY 2009, you can really see an uptick there in state funding reductions. That was in large part due to the impacts of the Great Recession. During that time, state funding was reduced to our schools, but to the tune of $119 million between FY 2003 and 2018. And QBE hasn't been fully funded since. So that's just one example of state decisions impacting us here on the local level. Go to the next one, Mike. I've already mentioned these differences. Cap of the mill rate, can't hold more than 15% in reserve. That gives us, that 15% gives us about 6 to 8 weeks of operating expenses. We typically use those reserves from July 1 until property taxes come in November. Typically around Halloween, we'll get to a low mark where we've spent those reserves down, operating the system until property taxes come in each year. That's important to note, board members, because that reserve keeps us from having to go out and take out TANs, tax anticipatory notes, that come with hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes in interest that you're having to pay when you're taking those notes out to make payroll until property taxes do come in. And I've already mentioned the 5 mil share there. Go ahead, Mike. Local fair share, 5 mils that goes to the state. I mentioned earlier that originally 581, it was actually on the ballot as a statewide exemption. We've since received clarity that that's a local exemption. What that means is the state is going to get local fair share off of the gross digest. Then exemptions are applied, and then school districts get their funding. Local fair share for us, it's $46.7 million this year. It's increased 18.9 million over the last 3 years, which is a net $18.9 million decrease for the school district. Go to the next one, Mike. You can see the growth of our local fair share. It starts in FY93 and goes until this year, and you can see what the trend line does there. So as the digest grows, the local fair share grows, and we have to account for that budgetarily every year. Mike, if you go to the next one. State funding. This is 99-2000. You can see yellow is the percentage of state funding. It was 60.7% of our budget was made up by state funding in 99-2000. Go to the next one, Mike. 2014-15 state funding was 51.36% of our general fund budget. Go to the next one, Mike. And you can see this year it's 46.22% of our budget. So we're seeing less and less of a percentage of our budget being made up by state funds and more of a percentage being made up by local funds. Go to the next one, Mike. Just an article from the Fayette Citizen that I've referenced a few times. Fayette implemented a cap. The local delegation actually implemented a cap over there a few years ago. I think they're in year 3 or 4 now, and you can certainly read the article and see what the reality has been for them over in Fayette. Go to the next one, Mike. Just a few comments here. The millage rate is your tool that you use to make sure that we can adequately fund education. You don't assess property. I don't know the full long-term implications of something like 581. It's a brand new model. And we have an opportunity, or one-time opportunity, March the 1st, we have to make a decision one way or the other. I do know that we have some things that separate school systems and cities and counties that we have to consider as we look at this. And I hope that I've given you the information that you're going to need to be able to make the best decision you can make. Mr. Chair, I'll take any questions from anybody, and I do have a few final comments that I'd like to make, if I may.
Do you want to go to our questions first? I know I have a question, and I want to open it up to the other board members. I think they have some questions. We can do
Sure.
that. My question is, and start with a little bit of a comment. You know, thank you for this presentation. We've gone through it now, what, I think you said 5 times.
5 times.
A lot of information. And the more I hear it, you know, we're all homeowners, up here also, and we have the same concerns and the same inflation's hitting us the same way. We're citizens here and live in Coweta County. And it seems that the 581 legislation doesn't take into account the differences between school systems in the cities and counties. They lumped all of us together, but we operate independently. And then on top of that, we've got that I don't want to call it a burden, but that responsibility to provide the best education that this system possibly can. That's what we were elected for, and what our citizens expect. So we've had some conversations here. My question to you is, could we explore the possibility, and you already mentioned it, of a local legislation that would benefit the taxpayers, young families to senior citizens, and also preserve the funding that we need to operate the school system that we're responsible for providing the funding for? Could we work with the local delegation to come up with something that would hopefully benefit both?
Yes. Yes, absolutely you can.
Okay.
I think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Ms. Dees.
I just wanted to make a couple of corrections. I've adamantly taken notes from all of the speakers, and I've been listening to you guys. I just want to correct a few misstatements that I've heard. One speaker said that our bus drivers do not receive benefits. That is not true. I wanted you to clarify that. Our bus drivers do, in fact.
Yes, ma'am.
receive help.
Bus drivers have the same benefit package that any other employee has, yes.
Thank you.
and I wanted to clarify, we had a speaker here that she was a lobbyist at the Capitol. We're often at the Capitol. Dr. Horton and I were there last Monday. And she lobbied on Senate Bill 94, and this was a Senate bill that they are trying to add an addendum to 581, asking for a halt of proceedings to wait so that we don't have to, she said we had time, we should take our time and be patient. That extension is only proposed at this time. It is not a law. It is only proposed, and it's only kind of floating through the State House and Senate. And it was really, I think, extended for those with like maybe a first-time board member, and also with districts who suffered from the hurricane. So we do not have the luxury to not have this done by March 1st, correct?
My understanding is that is, I don't even know if it's on the floor. I know it's been proposed. But there is legislation floating out there, but it hasn't moved through the process, no.
Thank you.
Are there any other board questions this side?
I'd just like to make one comment. I've been watching all this for years, and when you talk about reassessments, I contacted the tax commissioner's office and got some information from 2005 up to 2020. And for years, the county didn't reassess property. Good deal for us taxpayers, but it shorted the school system. And during that whole time, we were also faced with austerity cuts from the state, not a good deal for the school system. So when inflation hit and they were forced to do reassessments, that's, in my mind, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons you saw the massive increases in your values kind of at one time. That wasn't our fault.
Any comments this side at this time? Dr. Horton, you said you had a couple more comments before we move on to public comments?
Yeah, Mr. Glover, if I may, I just do have a few comments that I'd like to make, especially after I've listened over the last month. Just felt like there are a few things that I might need to say. If you don't mind, typically don't do this, but I wrote it out longhand because I wanted to make sure that my words fit with what I wanted to say. Board members and members of the public, I understand that the decision on whether or not to opt out of House Bill 581 has garnered thoughts and opinions on both sides, many of them strongly felt. In my opinion, this is as it should be. I understand we're talking about the two most important things to people: their children and their money. I don't take it lightly, and I know that you don't either. I do, however, I want to take a moment to step back from facts and figures related to potential impacts of the implementation of House Bill 581 and to address some of the misconceptions, misinformation that have been presented as facts in this room over the last month. Times I've sat and listened to individuals share information about our school system, our academic and physical performance, and about me. Couldn't be further from the truth. Things like our per pupil expenditure is $20,000 per student, when in fact it's just over $13,100 per student. It compares very favorably to surrounding districts, just as our millage rate does. I've got a chart, Mike, if you'll pull it, I think I sent it to you, from the DOE website. And it shows, if you can pull it up, that last year our per pupil expenditure ranked 148th out of 189 school districts in Georgia for all expenses. It ranked 111th out of 189 when you just look at state and local expenses. Straighten access out? I can give you access from my phone, man. I should have done that earlier, shouldn't I? Let me just give you access. Make you an editor. How about that? I was feeling it too, Mike. Guess I'm not as prepared as I should have been, huh? Send it to you, Mike. You got it. And he'll pull that up for me in just a second. We're 111th when you look at just state and local expenses. Not from me, everybody. It's from the Georgia Department of Education website. We have been and will continue to be good stewards of what we've been entrusted with. It's what the board's charged me with. Per pupil expenditures below the state average overall, and it's below the average spending of most surrounding districts, metro districts, and districts both comparable to, larger than, and smaller than ours. It's not just true between the fiscal year shown last year, it's been true for many years. Mike is the other document I just shared with you. I've also sat and listened as some individuals have stated that our district's low performing, not a good steward of the resources that we have. In fact, according to information released just last week, according to Niche, we're ranked 33rd in the state of Georgia out of 189 districts related to student achievement. 18th in the district in student enrollment and the top 18% of school system rankings. I also encourage you to go look at our student achievement over the last 10 years on the Georgia Department of Education website. We compare very favorably. We also outpace both the state and national average in ACT and SAT scores. We have a graduation rate that's above 91%, among many other performance criteria. By the way, our community asked years ago that we require more of our students to achieve that graduation rate than do most other school districts in Georgia. We require students to successfully complete 28 credits. Most systems in Georgia require only 23. Are we satisfied with that achievement data? Absolutely not. But we are far from a low-performing school district. And I believe our teachers and staff members play a vital role in helping our community thrive. We're well above the state average in academic rankings, well below in per pupil expenditure, with the lowest millage rate in the metro area. Seems like a pretty good return on investment to me. I've listened while a lot's been thrown at me personally. I've been described as a socialist, a bureaucrat, even unchristian, among other invective. Those who know me know that's far from true. But I understand criticism comes with the territory. I signed up for it and I'm good with it. I also signed up with the knowledge that my number one job is to be the chief advocate for public education in Coweta County. And that can make me a target as well. Maybe not with most people, but with some. The notion that the board does only what I say, as some have claimed, is patently false as well. I make recommendations to you. The board makes decisions. I'm responsible for working within those decisions. That's how a good governance team works. It's how we work together. We disagree from time to time, and much preparation takes place leading up to any vote. My job is to give the board the best information that I can in order to make the most informed decision possible for our students and for our employees. The board ultimately decides what is best for students. The circumstances in which we find ourselves here, evaluating the likely impacts of a novel piece of legislation and one which seems at times to be uniquely indifferent to the fiscal realities of operating local schools, is no different in that regard. I've also listened and sat here and listened to folks talk about our bloated central office. Certainly a convenient narrative, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Mike, that's the right document I sent you a minute ago, if you'll pull it up. And you had access to that when I saw it on the screen. There you go. Here's a chart for you. Mike can expand it. Fact of the matter is our bloated central office has one more administrator in it than it did in 2018, and that's a director of safety. It's an important investment, a local investment, mind you, considering the times that we currently find ourselves in. I encourage you to compare our central office staff numbers to those of similar districts. I believe that, as you will in other areas, you'll find that we compare very favorably. I've also listened as people list central office administrators' salary and talk about how undeserving these people are. These people work hard. I require a lot of them. think they deserve to be paid comparably. I encourage you to go look at other districts, and I think we will be comparable in that area as well. I applaud their efforts. I believe that they're dedicated to this system, and I believe that they deserved everything that they've gotten in the way of pay. I know sometimes when people are passionate about their arguments, they can sometimes make claims to fit a narrative rather than a narrative to fit the facts. I know many people may genuinely not know some of the things I've mentioned. I encourage you to go look them up. I also know that for some, these and other facts just simply don't fit the narrative that some wish to create about me, our teachers and administrators, and our school system, and our school board. But the facts are available, and you can check them out. They're the truth. Like all of you, I live here. I pay taxes here. I feel the things you feel. I have an 82-year-old mother who lives in a neighboring county. She's on a fixed income, especially since my dad died 15 years ago. I, like many of you, don't want to pay a dime more in taxes than I have to. My home assessment has doubled in value in the last 6 years. I am, however, different in this one way, in that I have a professional obligation to ensure that our school system can continue to meet its obligations to our students and to our communities, and that our students and families have the best opportunities to achieve their dreams, and that we do it in a fiscally responsible manner. This obligation might mean that sometimes I have to recommend something that doesn't benefit me or any of you personally, or as in this case, that I provide you with hard facts even when it's inconvenient. I'll continue to meet that obligation and provide you and our students with the best that I possibly can. And I hope that we can work together to come to a common sense solution on what that will be. Any questions? Mike?
I would like to just add really quickly, I have been doing my homework as well, and I hear this narrative that we need to cut central office by 50%. So I did my homework and I looked at that very closely. The top 9 paid people in our central office make up 0.75% of this budget. That is a tiny amount. Most of the money in this school system goes to the hard-earned teachers and staff in this district that work directly with kids. So that narrative needs to stop.
Okay, before we go on to public comments, just to remind everyone of a few of the rules that we have. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Please be respectful of each speaker. Side conversations, comments, plus, for or against are very distracting to us up here. And we want to be respectful to each of you that are going to speak and be able to hear what everyone has to say. So with that, we'll start down the list. The first is Shauna Trepp. And I apologize in advance if I mispronounce some names or misread some of these. I'll do my best.
And I know a strong school system plays an essential role in that. Therefore, I do encourage the board to opt out of HB 581. Opting out is not a tax increase. It is maintaining local control of our property taxes and school funding rather than handing it over to the state. As it was written on the ballot, HB 581, or Amendment 1, included an option for a local government, municipality, or school system to opt out. Why would the state legislators include an opt-out provision in a constitutional amendment? Because they knew it would create major funding deficits. Which is why the bill also includes an option for an additional 1% sales tax, or the floating local option sales tax, to help offset the deficit. But unlike counties and cities who can collect the sales tax, our schools cannot access these funds. HB 581 is portrayed as property tax relief when it is just shuffling of tax from property to sales and to exclude our schools from funding. I am empathetic to those that have felt the burden of increased property value and as a result, a higher property tax bill. I'm including that as well. However, opting in does not freeze or lower your property taxes. That will still increase with inflation. And we have all felt the squeeze of high inflation in recent years, and it seems that it will only continue increasing. There are all alternative options for relief for these residents without relinquishing local control of our property taxes to the state and underfunding our schools. The board has responded to residents' concerns and has lowered the millage rate in 4 of the last 5 years. It is at the lowest rate since 1983. There are multiple county homestead exemptions to provide property tax relief, including many specifically for seniors. Why would we opt in to such a broadly reaching and limiting proposal like HB 581? Do we really want to limit our tax collection from corporate-owned homes and rental companies? Or do we want to provide relief specifically to local homeowners in need with a more targeted approach, like additional or expanded homestead exemptions? Well-funded schools attract families, businesses, and investments and benefit the entire area. We want Coweta to be a thriving community. We want investment from businesses to bring high-quality jobs to the area, and we need an educated workforce to do that. Our schools are an investment in the future, and I urge you to opt out. Thank you.
Next is Zahara Billings.
Thank you for taking the time here to be with us. I stand before you not as an expert, not as a politician, but as a concerned individual, a parent, a neighbor, and a member of the community who believes deeply in the power of unity, compassion, and fairness. Today, I want to talk about why we must come together to support the opt-out of HB 581 proposal. At its core, HB 581 threatens to undermine the values we hold dear: equity, opportunity, and the well-being of every individual in our community. While the proposal may appear to address certain challenges on the surface, its implications run far deeper, and the consequences could be devastating for many of us. First and foremost, HB 581 risks widening the gap between privileged and marginalized. It proposes measures that could disproportionately affect those who already struggle, our low-income families, our children, underfunded schools, and our neighbors who rely on public services to survive. Is this the kind of community that we want to build? One where the most vulnerable are left behind while a select few thrive? I believe we are better than that. I believe we are a community that lifts each other up and fights for fairness, and that refuses to turn a blind eye to injustice. Secondly, HB 581 can stifle the voices of those who need to be heard the most. It threatens to limit access to resources, education, and opportunity that empowers individuals to advocate for themselves and their families. When we silence those voices, we lose diversity of their voices, the richness of perspective, and the collective strength that comes from within, of inclusivity. We cannot afford to let this happen. Our strength lies in unity and the ability to listen and learn and grow. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this is HB 581 in the message sends to our children. They are watching us. They're learning from our decisions that we make today. What will they think if we allow this policy to prioritize short-term gains over long-term well-being? What will they believe if we fail to stand up for what is right? We owe it to them to create a future that is just, equitable, and full of promise. We owe it to them to say no to HB 581 and opt out. Today, I'm asking you to join me in taking this action. Let's opt out of HB 581. Let us send a clear message that we value fairness, that we cherish our community, and that we are willing to fight for what is right. This is just not about policy. It's about the people. It's about the legacy we want to leave behind, and about ensuring that every person in this community has a chance to live within their dignity, pursue of their dreams, and know that it matters. So let's stand together, let's raise our voices, opt out of HB 581, and choose a path that reflects the very best of who we are. Thank you.
Next is Kyle Trepp. We'll go on to Carolyn Frankleton. Frackleton, right?
Hello, board members. My name is Carolyn Frackleton, and I have been a resident of Coweta County and a homeowner for almost 18 years. I'm not up here claiming to understand the nuances of taxes and tax law, but I'm here on behalf of my children and the children of the county. I do know that decisions made by you all affect the schools and the children. I have three children, one at East Coweta High School, one at Lee Middle School, and one at Noonan Crossing. We've been part of the Coweta County school system for 16 years, and in that time, my children have thrived. We have been proud to be part of these schools. We have had educators and administrators who have given our kids the best opportunities to grow. We appreciate everyone in these schools pouring into them, and I know that this starts at the top, and this starts with you, the school board, setting goals to best serve the children and this county. I'm also the founder of a local Facebook page called Mamas of Coweta. This page has almost 14,000 members and has been active for 12 years. As a moderator of this page, I can get a pretty good picture of what the local families of Coweta County need. Many families need a good, safe school to send their children because this might be their best chance at an opportunity to have a good education. Many families also choose to leave Coweta because of the schools aren't rated as high as the neighboring counties. I also see many families choosing to go to private schools or charter schools, and that is their choice. I understand the need for our school system to have all of the resources that it can have. My children were at Noonan Crossing a few years ago when they lost their Title I funding, and this meant the children could not have computer or art classes unless the PTO funded it. I would like opportunities like this and other opportunities that I am not aware of to be provided to our children. I believe this is the responsibility of the county and its residents to take care of our county's youth. I understand many people don't feel this way and they don't have children in the school, but we don't get to choose when it's convenient for us to take care of the children. All of the children in the county are all of our children, and they deserve the best from us and from you. Thank you for looking out for the children and their best interests. I support the school board and their choice to opt out of HB 581.
Amber Brahman.
Hi, I'm Amber Bauman, and I'm a realtor and a mother of two who are currently enrolled in Coweta County schools, and I actually grew up and graduated from Fayette County schools just across the way. I came to the last board meeting with the full intention of speaking to you and supporting your decision to opt out, but upon realizing that there was more than one meeting that I could attend, I decided to opt out myself and just listen. There's no doubt in my mind that you face a difficult decision, as both sides of this issue raise fantastic concerns. And what you're actually hearing are the same words across the board, and those words are, I'm terrified. People are terrified that you're going to make the wrong decision. One side is terrified that they won't be able to afford their homes anymore, or they'll need to, unfortunately, go back to the workforce or something crazy, while the board sits there with superintendent making 37% more than the National Secretary of Education. One side is terrified that when stuff hits the fan, then our children, our future, our whole reason for doing all of this will be the first corner cut. Arts and music are already underfunded as it is. And just this year, Thomas Crossroads Elementary had to practically beg for applicants for their front office staff. I'd love to say that I'm on only one side of the fence and that my argument's so compelling that you'll have to select just my side, but in reality, I'm not. I'm actually here to ask you to do something crazy, and that thing is to do both. I understand you can't both opt in and opt out, but what you can do is assess the spending, make necessary cuts in discretionary funding and salaries to ensure that the 20% cap that everyone is so worried about doesn't even matter. I'll admit that a certain someone that used to be on the school board and called you all incompetent idiots is not someone I genuinely listen to. In fact, I'm staunchly against just about everything she stands for, but I decided to look into one of her crazy ideas and check the numbers to see how things would play out. If just the superintendent and the assistant superintendents took her proposed 25% cut, they would still be sitting at $260,000 and $150,000 salaries. These are well above the average, even for other systems of our size. While I agree you need to be paid and paid well for your time and energy, honestly, having to listen to her yell at you all the time, I do think that salaries could easily manage those sorts of cuts and funnel the massive savings somewhere else. I'll be honest and say that I trusted Dr. Horton and went to bat for him in 2020 with the response to COVID and keeping our kids safe, especially mine who are immunocompromised. But I'm terrified that you're all going to put your pockets above our children when it comes to actually making the right decision to cut your salaries and eliminate that waste. And because of that, I'm asking you to opt out. We as a community will come together and we will be Noonan strong and foot the bill for our kids and make your salaries so that you don't have to worry about them anymore. Thank you.
Next is Laurie Newsom.
I've been a citizen of Coweta County for over 25 years. Seen a lot of stuff go on having to do with the Board of Education. I want to start off by saying that it's a problem when your house is assessed at a rate higher than it could possibly sell for, that such as mine is. I know the board does not assess property. I know y'all don't. But you are asking not to be regulated by what we voted for by saying the assessment could only increase a certain amount a year. You don't want to deal with that, so you're getting involved in assessing properties there. You can't have it both ways. The way you're looking at is so that you can increase the tax base more than the 3% that law that we all voted on. 51,000, I believe, voters. Wasn't it 51,000 that voted for that law that you want to overturn? So what I'm going to say, I hope I'm wrong, but I truly believe they're going to vote against us tonight. So I'm just going to end with, look at the person sitting next to you. If you don't know them, get to know them before you leave today, because we're going to have work to do after they do this tonight. So y'all get to know your neighbors, exchange phone numbers, exchange email addresses. We can all get together later if they really do. They always vote the way Mr. Horton asked them to. So I believe they're going to vote against us tonight. So y'all get to know your neighbors so we can get together in a couple of weeks.
Richard Harper. Richard Harper.
Had a nice conversation with a lady on Sunday. She very kindly gave me about a half hour of her time, and I wanted to talk about House Bill 581. Geez, it sounds like the sky's falling, guys. Listen to the scenario from Mr. Horton and all the things that might go wrong. It just sounds like we're in terrible shape. But the lady that I talked to about this bill, this law, I asked her if she wanted to go first, and she said no. She said, I want you to go first. Tell me what you think. So what I told her was that in 2014, the gross revenues that this county school system used was $193 million. The student population then was 22,200 students. The gross revenue, if you get all the tax money that's proposed and you opt out of 581, will be about $484 million. You know what the student population is? 22,900 students. So you got $300 million more dollars for 700 more students in the school system. The sky ain't falling. The sky's not falling. All of these things that you're bringing in that could happen, that will happen, it's just not. So then it was this nice lady's turn, and she told me that if you didn't opt out, that there would have to be budget cuts, and there would have to be personnel cuts, and a lot of the classroom things for kindergartners and first graders and second graders you'd have to decide what you could do and what you couldn't do. Well, that's not true, because only the parcels of land in Coweta County that are homesteaded are going to be affected by this. Nobody's getting a tax cut. There's no reduction in revenue. There's no reduction in revenue. You're going to have a whole bunch more money in 2025 than you do in 2024. So it's not true what you're saying. You're going to have a ton more money in 2025 than 24. All the businesses are still going to have to pay what their assessed value is. all the properties that are rentals are still going to have to pay. Why don't you take just a little bit of a break for the taxpayer, for the people that are vested in the county, the young people buying a house, or the old people that are going nowhere? Just give us a little bit of a break. Just a handful of us. Give us a little bit of a break. That's what I'd like to see. You got more money than you need.
Mike Ferrante, and I apologize if I messed that up.
Well, if you messed it up, you would not be the first one that messed up the pronunciation of my name. I'm Mike Ferrante. I'm a resident here in Coweta County for about 35 years. We cash a state teacher's retirement check every month. My wife was an educator here in the county for almost 20 years. And we've been paying taxes like everyone else has throughout that whole time. I hold a few offices. I'm the president of the White Oak Homeowners Association. I am a member of a couple of golf associations. I sing with a gospel quartet, and I've sang at many of your churches. I know many of you board members personally. I have great fond memories of many things that this school board has done over the time. Members of the school board who are very near and dear to my heart have made great decisions over these past 25 or 20 some odd years. However, there was one date that was missing on the HB amendment decision timeline, and that was voting day. Voting day voted on a very poorly written HB 581. The many people that I talked to, the many people that came to me within White Oak, within the Golf Association, within my other contacts, had come to me and said they didn't know whether they should vote yes or no based on how it was written. We can't change that. It was written the way it was written. So all we can do is deal with it today. So what I'm going to say to you is that this past November, there was a change in Washington. I don't know what that change will happen as it filters down over the next 4 years, but the people spoke. I believe the people also spoke on November the 5th at Election Day and voted to opt in, not opt out. So I don't know if that's the answer or not the answer that you're looking for, but if there are other avenues that we can look at, then I think we need, as Mr. Glover said, we need to look at other avenues in order for that to happen. I believe that this school board, as an elected body, has been doing a great job. I have heard people say that they want this to become a partisan board. I do not want it to be partisan board. I argued against partisan board on a board member that was currently on your board. I don't think we need partisan politics. I think this is about our children. This is about the future of Coweta County. But some of the numbers, the ones that were just presented specifically about the basically flat growth line, but the budget increase need to be addressed. Thank you.
Christopher Bassett.
Can I ask one question? Does this map also represent the outcome of the vote of 581 across all these counties? You don't know. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Christopher Bassett. I'm 32 years old. I've been a lifelong resident. I see Superintendent Horton smiling because I think he remembers me because I was class of 2010 at East Coweta High School. Matter of fact, and was a student under while he was assistant principal. I had to speak with him. My dad had to come up and speak with him a few times, and we had some things need to be addressed, but that's not part of what today is. Today is about the funding, right? even as a product of the school system, and I've seen what the school system has done through the years. Like I said, very much so. I'm a very involved member. I've lived here, been born here. Coweta County is my home. Left, came back, all the things. So I encourage you guys to not opt out. I want you to opt in. There's funding cuts that can be done. You know, yes, if there's a little fat on the bone, there's a way we can trim the fat. You know, there are people whose jobs within the school system is to figure out where money can be allocated. And I do believe that those folks can come in and say, okay, if we are limited here, we can figure out where we need to proportion the funds. Because, I mean, I'll say this. I'm sure we would all have raised. If I went to my job tomorrow and they said, hey, here's a $500,000. We're going to give you a raise tomorrow. Nobody's going to say no. We all could use a little bit more money. But what matters is spending it responsibly, spending it accurately. That was the biggest thing. As a matter of fact, the Coweta County school system taught me going through my math teachers, all the algebra, it all come down to spending responsibly. That's part of what is being a good adult, and that is what I'm trusting the school board and all the employees of the Coweta County school system to do, is spend responsibly. We can get by if we opt in. We can absolutely get by. It's not going to be fun, and it's going to make things harder. But trying to cut others just to pad pockets or just to spend a little bit extra on paper, we've got to cut the fat somewhere. So all I'm asking you guys is opt in. Go to the folks, go to your treasurers, go to your financial responsibilities and say, hey, what can we do to make this work? Thank you for your time.
Helen Sherman.
Hello, I'm Helen Sherman. Wasn't born with that name, just married it. But first of all, I'd like to say that I don't think there's anybody here or anybody in this county that doesn't care about the children and their welfare and their education. But one of the things we have to care about is providing them with a home and with food and with clothing, and it's starting to get hard on people. Now, I've never had a child in the Coweta school system. I have had 2 grandchildren, and I'm not really here to criticize anything other than maybe DEI or CRT or maybe porn in the libraries. But other than that, what I'd like to say is that as far as House Bill 581, the biggest problem I have with that bill is the opt-out clause. I don't see the point in even making the bill with that opt-out clause. And as far as the millage rates being compared to other counties, that's only one part of the equation. It doesn't really mean anything that somebody's got a bigger millage rate than we do. You know, like some of the counties, they have 100% senior exemption at age 65. Well, here, you can be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old, and you're paying school tax. So that's just part of the equation. But the main thing I wanted to bring up is rule number 4 in your policy sheet about taking questions from us, because I haven't seen that happen. Mainly, the only thing I hear is sit down and shut up. So what I'd like to know is, you know, are you going to honor the rule number 4 and take questions?
Say that again, ma'am. I was trying to look at rule number 4 when you said that. Are you asking if you can ask us questions?
Will you be taking questions from us?
Not in the public hearing. We are all available for questions at any time. Our email addresses, I'll be glad to give them to you. They're available online. We get a lot of questions that way. Answering a question when we're taking up everyone else's time is kind of difficult. It's a lot better to do it email or phone calls or in person or something like that. So in interest of everyone's time, in getting through all the speakers, we will not be taking questions today.
Well, what was that? What does that number 4 mean then?
I'll have to read it and get with you
I
after
can
the
read
meeting.
it. It says, once the speakers for and against the issue have been heard, the chairman shall indicate that questions pertaining directly to the issue involved may be directed to the board.
Again, it doesn't say it has to be done during the public meeting. We will be glad to entertain any questions, but not in the interest of any
In other
of
words,
time.
sit down and shut up.
No, ma'am, that is not what I said. Mark Falk.
Great job on pronouncing my last name. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm actually going to read to you today. As a grandfather with grandkids in Coweta County, as a citizen living on a fixed income, meaning that every dollar I pay in taxes is one less to pay for food, gas, shelter, or helping others in need. As a homeowner who voted last November to limit the growth of taxes to an inflationary cap on the appraisal of my home, I'm asking this school board to do the right thing and respect the voice of 51,000 voters in this county who voted the same way. In short, we want to opt in, and we want you to do the same. Dr. Horton, you and this board have been given a sacred trust, a stewardship responsibility of great importance. As you hear us speak out, please listen to us. We are only asking that you do what we, the people, voted for you to do. It should be the simplest decision you have to make this year. Ask just this one question. What do the majority of the Coweta County voters want concerning this matter? And the answer is opt in. This is not just a political choice, it's a moral choice with consequences. This board is accountable to the voters in this life. You may choose to ignore us in this life, but all of us will stand before the owner of it all one day and give an account to him for all our choices, including this one. The scripture gives us several examples of this accounting, and we all should be prudent to heed those examples. As the knight in the Raiders of the Lost Ark said, choose wisely. I thank you very much for opting in.
Sean Miller.
I want to thank the school board and Superintendent Horton for having these hearings and the extra questions that you answered, Dr. Horton. Thank you. I appreciate that because you addressed some of the concerns that I had. So if I say something that's a little bit conflicting or something, that wasn't my intention, okay? So I'm trying to digest this. HB 581, which I would like to not opt out, is a shift of the tax burden off of homeowners, from what I understand. The homeowners are the little guys in the tax world. I'm a little guy, okay? We would like to have the property relief that this promises. If 581 doesn't change Dr. Horton's budget, I don't see anything in there that says it's going to defund or reduce his funding, and I don't think that's even the debate we're really having. I mean, it comes to that if we were to opt out, but let's not talk about that. Let's just talk about in or out, okay? And if we stay in, well, the homeowners' carried burden is reduced by the relief that the HB 581 provides. I'm going to skip over the sales tax because apparently that's not part of it. But we have those three other parts, the 5 mills, the floating homestead exemption, the estimated rollback rate, which helps homeowners like me who have had the appraised value go up 108% since 2017, and the inflation rate is the green one, red versus green. So the tax on that, even though the mills go down, I end up paying more in taxes. And I'll give you a copy at the end. That's okay. That way you know that I'm not making this up. If you opt out, there's nothing left for us to use to save ourselves from a tax relief, except to go after the budget. Well, we've got Dr. Horton giving us the budget. This is what it's going to take to do this, take care of the students, and he's hired to do that. He gave us a number, let's just do that. And we opt in and we proceed, okay? And then the homeowners, they get a little bit less tax with this option. But if you take it away from us, it's like a gift that we could have had, and now we're going to cry about it. And then we're going to have more debate. So I really don't want more debate, and I don't want to be upset. So we're not trying to defund you. We just want to reduce what we have to pay, the burden. And I'd hate to miss out on this opportunity. Thank you.
Carol Miller.
How y'all doing? Thank you again for letting us speak. HB 581 caps appraisal values and was voted for by a majority of Coweta County. In '23, 1 Senate bill and 4 House bills were written to address the horrible out-of-control property taxes in Georgia. S 349, HB 1185, 1022, 1031, and 1115. Negotiations and lobbyists brought about the opt-out clause and placed our school board in a position that pits them against the community and homeowners. This is unfair to both the board and the homeowners. If the HB 581 is the overwhelming choice of the voters, why is there even an opt-out? The lobbyists and associations need to be held responsible, not our school board, for this mess. Putting the school board and the homeowners in this position is divisive. Homeowners are rightfully afraid of being taxed out of their homes. Why else would all this commotion come about last year? Coweta County has a 10% to 11%, depending on your sources, poverty rate. 15% of the population is senior, and most of them on fixed income. HB 581 was written because of outrageous property taxes across the state. Opt-out does not allow for future opt-in except by a local act that would require vote in 2/3 the General Assembly and a local vote, more headaches. Opt-out will make Coweta ineligible for the FLOST. And does anybody find it a little odd that our school board is put in this position of making a decision that's already been decided and voted on? Not fair to them. Not fair to y'all, not fair to us. There's an agenda somewhere. Board members have to face community and everyday interactions. Those who put them in this position don't. Opt-out, from what I understand and the research shows, higher property taxes, deter potential investors, less jobs, less economic growth, prospective buyers deterred, some migration out of the county because of the high taxes. And usually the poorest 20% pay 4.2% of their income on property taxes. We're in uncharted waters, y'all. I want you to please pray between now and the time you vote for guidance. There exists an answer to meet the school needs and the homeowners' needs. We need to work together to find this, and may God bless you in this next 6 or 7 hours that you've got before you have to make this decision. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
The next speaker did not leave a last name, it's Pat. Is that with a C? I do want to get your last name. K-L-E-I-N?
No, K-L-I-N-E. She spells hers C-L-I-N-E.
Okay, Ms. Clyde, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure we got you on the record. Thank you.
Usually people ask me if I can sing, and my response is, I can go crazy. That's her song. I decided to look up the oath of a school board member. And it says a school board member's oath of office typically includes a pledge to perform duties faithfully, support the Constitution, and respect the community. I just want to emphasize respect the community because the community has already spoken, they voted, and it is your oath to respect what they've asked you to do. So I stand before you asking you not to opt out. Thank you.
Charles Draper. Well, ma'am, there's a fine line there. I don't want to, and I had asked at the last meeting that we hold it to a very short level, if any. Now that one of our attendees has asked for no clapping, it is in the rules. Let's please do that. Y'all can express your approval in other ways, you know. So. What's that?
Her rights do not pass forward.
Charles Draper.
No person attending the meeting will be allowed to
Order, please. Order, please.
Wow, good morning. I've never been into one of these meetings before, but pretty interesting. Nice to see the board members to put their names with these faces with names. I'm here just to actually ask the board to really get together, huddle up after this, consider not opting out. I don't want you to opt out. I guess I'm prejudiced because I'm old. I grew up in Atlanta. I went to elementary school and we went to high school, 8th grade. We didn't have middle school, junior high. We didn't have schools where kids got ready to go to high school. You went to high school. I think Dr. Horton is up to the challenge. I think we can make it through this if we don't opt out. We got a lot. I noticed we have Assistant Superintendent of Financial Services, that's CPA, Comptroller, CPA, Accounting, Assistant Comptroller, Payroll Specialist, Benefit Specialist. We got a lot of smart people, a lot of good board members, I'm sure. I think they can do this. I think we can. I don't know that. I think it's a stretch to say we're just going to have a collapse of our school system and our social economic class, and the county is going to fall apart. I haven't formed an opinion of the board. A lot of people seem to have formed an opinion, and they seem to think maybe you're a little aloof and maybe not as transparent as you ought to be. And I want you to know that a lot of people are going to be upset if we opt out. And I don't want you to get your feelings hurt if a lot of people are coming after your positions come election day. I found it interesting. I was first time looking on the website of expenditures and things. And I just want you to know I'm not a auditor or anything, but a lot of people are going to be looking at every single thing, and they're going to want have a lot of questions to be answered. I noticed that this school year, employee benefits increased 28% plus. That's a big number. But that's good. Everybody needs good benefits. You keep employees by having good benefits. Ad valorem taxes, some money that came into the system, increased over 16%. That's a good increase. And one thing that was really terrific and great earnings on investments increased over 438%. I'd like to know how they did that. They got a hold of Nancy Pelosi's investment banker or something. They got a lot of more money into investment. That's great. And I think we're up to the challenge if you don't opt out. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Next is, I apologize, I can't read the first name. I believe it's Nahay Walker.
I'm sorry, they told me to sign.
Okay. You wish not to speak. I just want to be clear. Okay. Charles Brazel, Brazgal. Maybe they left. Brian Heiss.
All right. Thank you, Board, and everybody else for coming. You know, I'm sitting here and listening to everybody. I had a lot of stats to put out. But to be honest, I'm not even sure why we're here. You know, nothing is government funded. It's all taxpayer funded. And the taxpayers have already spoken. That's the bottom line. I do appreciate Dr. Horton. I appreciate your presentation. I've looked through it. I've tore through it. But to be honest, it fails to answer why we should disregard our voters. Why do we need this? And how would we spend the money? Just to be honest. And it's funny, you mentioned fitting the narrative. I think that's exactly what your brief did, fitted the narratives. It has biased comparisons. It has some misdirected stats. And then Mr. Glover said, we need a balance. Well, that balance is the 581, right? The state give it to us. So let me put some facts out. Over the past 10 years, budget is up over 240%, while students' growth is less than 3%. That's $260 million increased in budget, while we have 600 additional students in that 10 years. In the last 4 years, now you mentioned the bloated staff, well, the last 4 years, you've increased administrative staff by 11%. That's 4,086 staff members, while 2% increase in teachers. That's 1,400 teachers, somewhere in the ballpark. That's like having a whole lot of police chiefs and very few police officers on the street. It just doesn't make any sense. Superintendent salary and incentives, to be honest, has went up 30+% compared to teachers less than 3%. You make more than the governor. Superintendent travel incentives alone are more than some teachers make. I know, I have family members that are such. Young families are moving out of Coweta County because of the increased taxes, the increased cost of living. We need to fix this, and you have that opportunity. And I do trust you all because my kids graduated from right here. Now, I can tear through the budget, but that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to simply want to hear the voters. We want you to hear us and say no to opting out. There is no impact to the budget. We're going to have plenty. We've had excess in actual expenditure versus receipt. We have had excess. Simply give us, our young families, our seniors, a chance. All right, current budget is sufficient. An increased budget doesn't always mean positive results. We know that with that 240% increase, we had lower test scores. We had teachers that had to buy things out of their pocket to support their children. I know for a fact. I helped one. Dr. Horton, comparison stats can be twisted any way we want. You can make them say whatever you want. I just did, right? But mine came from your documents, your paperwork, what you submitted. I don't care what any other county does. We're Coweta, and we have spoken. And as representatives, I pray to the good Lord above that you honor our vote.
Ken Comerford. Ken Comerford.
Ken Comerford. So, the one thing I encourage you to do, I'm a numbers guy. I encourage the board to review the budget and spending. I encourage you to do a multi-year financial statement analysis, trend analysis. Because as Brian said, and this gentleman said earlier, we've gone from cost per student, and again, you can calculate it different ways. The revenue per student in 2015 was $9,918. That's information from the audit report from 2015. In 2025, based on the approved budget, the revenue per student will be $21,107. So you're going from $220 million to 484, almost $485 million in 10 years. And your students have only gone up by 600. This information is from the approved budget. It's from the audit reports. So I encourage you to look at a detailed trend analysis of what's happened over the last 5 or 10 years to see where things change. Not just based on the approved budget, that's very limited. Those accounts go down deeper. Where is the money going? What has changed? I've done financial analysis and auditing. We look for anomalies to review. I'm not saying anything bad is happening, but can we save money somewhere? Because we've doubled the amount of money we're spending per student, and people have taken the money we give every year. And like he said, I think there was $100 million in investments. That's a third of the budget, or used to be. It's not a, you know. So I encourage you to do an analysis of that. If you don't, hire somebody separate, because I know they said we have a lot of experts, which is true. But maybe I couldn't find a trend analysis anywhere that showed from year to year to year to year. But when you look at that, and again, I know they say 13 or 14,000. I took the numbers from the reports based on revenue and the number of students. Number of students might be a little off for 2025. I took it from the 2024 report. But those numbers are accurate. So our costs have doubled. And I encourage you to look at a trend analysis to understand where the money's going. I don't think we have a revenue problem. We have an expended problem. So I thank you.
Linda Joyce Meek.
Linda Mink, Coweta County. A lot of good speakers here today. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the citizens who have turned out, the people who are paying attention, those of us who have spread the word and created an awareness in our throughout our county. The attendance, your voices are so important, and I cannot thank all of you enough. The second thing is that I'm here to speak at, obviously we started at noon. We have a lot of working people. And so I'm here to speak for them because they're out earning money, trying to cover a mortgage, a rent, taking care of their kids, and they can't be here. So I'd like to say I'm here to represent them. In November, the voters handed you a mandate. We handed it to you. Now, we're going to find out tonight whether or not our voices mean anything to you. I'm hoping that they will, but it's very doubtful. But we will be here tonight to see what you do. Mr. Heiss, Mr. Draper, Mr. Ken, the last gentleman that spoke, your budget is so bloated. It is unbelievable. If I tried to run my personal business the way you have operated that budget, I'd be bankrupt. It is so bloated. There's so much waste, fraud, and abuse in your budget, and you can't stick to it. You can't reduce it. And Ms. Dees, I will repeat, downsize central office by 50% and cut the rest of the salaries 25%. That's a good start right there. The other thing is that this lady over here mentioned Thomas Crossroads Elementary. I think everybody in the community is aware that the principal of that school was.
That's a personnel issue. We're not going to discuss a personnel.
Oh, okay. So we're not. Oh, if you nurture theft, that so.
Ma'am, that is part of our policy. We do
Oh.
not discuss personnel.
Okay. Okay. Even when they're arrested. Even when they're arrested. It's a public meeting. Well, I think that's enough. We all know where you stand, and so I'm just glad to have had an opportunity to bring it out. Thank you, Ms. Dees.
Randall Hammock.
Hold on, Doc. Chairman, I hate to interrupt, because people's time is valuable. But if I heard this right, the last speaker just accused us of fraud. And I would say to the last speaker, if you are accusing the school system of fraud, please contact our attorney with the information so we can check on it.
Randall Hammett.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Horton, for having this and the board for hosting this. I've been a resident of Coweta County now for 25 years. Raised both of my sons here. They both got a great education in Coweta County. One went to Georgia Tech, go Jackets. Another one's at University of Georgia. Neither one of my sons went to Coweta County School. My wife and I believed it was best for them to go for Christian education. So we paid for our sons to go to Trinity Christian School all the way through. They have had great success. I would challenge you to speak with someone from Trinity Christian. Speak with somebody like Mr. Dean Demas, who used to be our head of school, headmaster at Trinity Christian, about the lives that are changed of attending a Christian school. Now, as a board, you guys represent all of us. You represent the public school parents, you represent private school parents, you represent the homeschool parents, you represent grandparents and people who have no children, because we're all paying and voting for taxes into the school system. And over the 25 years, I've probably paid over $100,000 into the school system. I'm not against public schools. I'm not against government education or anything like that. But I am very pro-choice in education. And we voted, in essence, to hold taxes. You do not have a revenue problem. You do not have a revenue problem. I've looked at the budget. I looked at this a few years ago. Trinity Christian's educating for less cost than Coweta County schools. It's not, you take all the money coming in and look at Central Christian. Other education forms are a good thing. Competition's a good thing. But every dollar you take from a parent affects them making that decision of whether or not they're going to send their child to the public schools or to a private school. Every dollar makes that decision harder. It was hard for us to make that decision because we're paying so much money. My portion was about $4,000 this year. And I don't have anybody in public schools anymore. They're beyond that. So just think about that. Think about what we voted for in November. Think about the parents and the decision they make. And those decisions can have eternal consequences because there are lives changed in some of the private schools permanently. Thank you.
Alan Brady.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's the last hearing. Praise the Lord. I'm here against opt-out. I broke out my old Northgate colors today. I wore this shirt for 2 senior nights on the football field. My sons had the privilege of being yelled at by then Coach Horton. Good times. Board members, I know you're in somewhat of a dilemma. Please remember who you represent. Dr. Horton's job is to be an advocate for the school system, including maximizing revenue. He's done a very good job. But your job is to consider the interests of all the citizens of Coweta County, not just a portion of them. And those citizens have resoundingly spoken at the ballot box. You should listen to them. I understand, finally, some of what the fuss is all about. I understand that if you allow the will of the people to go forward and do not opt out, some changes might have to be made. The procedure to decide how much money goes back and forth between various parties is excessively complicated. But I do understand that opting in could reduce revenue from one of many sources directly and indirectly due to the excessive complicated excessively complicated way state funding is calculated. But you have plenty of wiggle room to overcome this if it's needed. Remember, only the people who own their own homes are affected by the valuation increase limit. This is just a portion of the tax base. Commercial and rental properties are not affected. Values would continue to go up and more properties will be developed and added to the calculation. And sadly, inflation isn't going anywhere as long as runaway federal spending continues. So the tax base of homeowners will go up also. You can increase taxes up to just under 30% with a majority vote, even with no increases to the digest, which we know won't happen. And if you gain the trust of the people by hearing and respecting what they have to say here and at the ballot box, then you can persuade them to vote to give you even more room to increase the millage rate. There are other options that I don't have time to go into now and that others have mentioned. But if you don't listen to the people and decide to overrule their vote, it won't be forgotten, and you'll probably be faced with a mandated local limit of some kind, like most of our neighbors, including Fayette, Fulton, and Forsyth, already have. I ask you to pray about it, and when faced with difficult choices, listen to the sovereign will of the people. Thank you.
Maxwell Britton.
Good afternoon. This is a line that you don't want to cross. When we voted for Amendment 1, we didn't just support a policy change. We voted to amend our Constitution. We exercised our right as citizens to put protections in place for homeowners, retirees, and working families. Protections against being taxed out of our homes. And now this board is considering overruling that vote, ignoring the will of the people, undermining the very taxpayers who fund the school system. That is not leadership. That's a bad choice. This wasn't a close call. It was a landslide. The voters of Georgia and Coweta County made themselves clear. 164 members of the Georgia House voted yes. 52 Georgia senators voted yes. Every county in Georgia backed it. Every member of Coweta's own delegation supported it. There was no confusion. There wasn't any controversy. The people spoke, and they expect to be honored. The message was simple: cap the taxes, respect the voters, and stop the greed. And yet this board is considering turning back on that, on us. Coweta County voters didn't come here to argue with their school board. We came here to be heard. We are the homeowners. We're the families and the retirees who trusted this process, who trusted you. We expect you to do the same. This is your chance to do the right thing, to lead, to listen to the people, to show that you stand with them and not against them. Stand with us, because if you turn your back on the people who put you in office, they will find somebody else to replace you. Because at the end of the day, Coweta County believes in accountability, in fairness, and leaders who serve with integrity. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Julie Campbell.
Hello, everybody. I am Julie Campbell. I didn't plan to speak today. I came here, just jumped away from work for, thinking I could jump away for an hour. That didn't work out. So what I want to say is I raised 3 daughters in this county. I don't typically get involved in a lot of the local politics, but what I can say is that I trust you guys to make the decisions on our behalf, and I am urging you to opt out. I would like to read a letter from a friend of mine who couldn't be here. She is at the Georgia Capitol today. So this is the letter. Dr. Horton and members of the school board, my name is Lindsay Parker, and I'm a resident of Sonoy. I have 2 children who attend Eastside Elementary, and I'm a member of the PTO. I'm writing to you to express my support for your intention to opt out of HB 581. My experience with Coweta County schools, while relatively limited thus far, has shown me that administration and staff care deeply for our students, and they do the best they can with the resources they have. Those resources are not abundant, and I believe the district has been a good steward of our funding. Public education is one of our most valuable assets as a country, and one that should be invested in, not vilified. When properly funded and supported, it provides an equal opportunity for all students to establish a solid foundation upon which their lives can grow and thrive. It also adds value to our communities in the form of increased property values, investment in our local economy, and the fostering of community amongst school families that provides a social safety net, as well as a broader public safety benefits for our county. Please know that there are many of us in this community who value you, and our schools will continue to support you. Sorry, let me repeat that because it's important. Please know that many of us in this community who value you and our schools will continue to support you. As you are well aware, we do not opt out of HB. If we do not opt out of HB 581 now, we run the risk of severely limiting our ability to fund the Coweta County schools in a way that allows them to be competitive and fully functional. With more school funding hurdles coming our way all the time,
I'm sorry, Ms.
almost
Campbell,
done.
your time is up. I apologize.
Thank you for your time and for keeping our students' interests in mind.
I want to thank each of the attendees for coming out today. Those of you that spoke, thank you very much for your opinion. Obviously, there's no vote will be taken at this moment, but I want to open up the floor to my fellow board members if there are any comments, and we'll start on the right-hand side. Mr. Farmer.
I have one question about House Bill 581. I know it's put up there, says 3%, but that's not what it could end up, correct? That it could go lower, it could go much higher. Is that correct?
My understanding of the legislation or of the referendum, Mr. Farmer, is it is not capped at 3%. It's capped to an inflationary measure. The one we think they're going to use is CPI. So under that, it could swing. It could swing above 3. Could swing if inflationary rate is 5%. Could be 5% one year. It could swing back the other direction as well, where if the inflationary rate in a particular year was below 3%. So it would vary.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson.
Yes, I got one question. How many school districts in the state of Georgia?
189.
189. Okay. And I appreciate everybody being here, really do. I voted on the same ballot that you guys voted on, voted for the same amendment that you voted on, okay? But also at the bottom of that amendment, it gave school districts and municipalities the ability to opt in or opt out, okay? Why was that on there? And I don't even expect anybody to answer why that was on there. And I know my numbers are not 100% accurate. 189 districts. The map shows 22 of those districts undecided. 5 are in. That means that 27, 189, okay, 160 roughly are opting out. Why are so many districts opting out? Why? Whoa, wait a minute now. Wait a minute, let me finish.
Mr. Robertson is speaking, please.
Why are they opting out? Okay? So that should tell you that maybe the legislators knew what they were doing when they gave school districts the ability to opt in or opt out. The only point that I'm trying to make is the majority of the school districts in the state of Georgia who overwhelmingly passed this, they're looking to do the same thing that we're doing, okay? That's all we're doing. Hang on, I'm not feeling any questions. This is my time to speak, okay? I appreciate you being here. I'm a taxpayer. I got 2 properties, one that I live on, one that I pay taxes on. I got one that I inherited from my dad when he passed away. My stepsister, who was a caretaker for my dad, she currently lives in that house. Okay, I was buildings and grounds guy from the time my dad became unable to take care of that property. Okay, so I know all there is to know about paying property taxes. Mine went up on both. My stepsister still lives there, paying a modest rent, okay? But there's a lot of upkeep on that house, okay? So I know very well what it's like to pay property taxes. Mine went up. I can't file for a homestead exemption on my dad's place because that's not where I live. I can only apply on mine. So I hear everybody. Everything's going up. My budget's tight. Can we look at our budget? Absolutely. Absolutely. I had some conversations with some of the board members the other day, so maybe we need to take a little bit deeper dive on what we're spending. Is there anywhere that we can save some money? I don't know. There may be. I do it. I eat out a whole lot less now than I used to. All right? I eat a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches. Okay? And I know it's starting to show a little bit, but I'm with you. I mean, I hear you. And I appreciate you guys coming in here and letting us know how you feel. Okay? And all I can say is I hear you. And you elected us to do the right thing. And that's what we're trying to do. But somebody said it's all about the kids. It's all about the kids. It's not about us. I don't mind paying property taxes because I want people that are educated in our schools and working in our restaurants and our law enforcement. I want them to give us the best community that we can have to live in. I was born and raised here. I ain't going nowhere. I'm retired. Somebody asked me, where are you going to retire to? I said, right here. Right here. I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to go to the beach and then come back home. I want to go to the mountains and come back home. I want to go to the casino and come back home, okay? I don't want to go anywhere. I'm vested in this community. So I'm going to do everything that I can to do what's right for this community. And I see some heads shaking. You don't have to buy into everything I say. I understand that, okay? But we're trying. We're trying. Give us that much. Thank you.
Ms. Dees? Okay. Mr. Dubose?
Okay, thank you. Number one, thank you all for coming. Whether you spoke here or I've spoken with you, through email or at one of the schools that I've been to or even at church this past weekend, I spoke about 5 or 6 different people about this same topic. I understand the financial burdens that we have. I say we because we pay the property taxes just like everyone out here does. But at the same time, we have to be able to ensure that our schools remain properly funded, and that our students get the education they deserve. This isn't about something that we're looking at for next year or 3 years or 5 years. This is an amendment. And the only way it changes is if there's another amendment. What's going to happen 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the road? I have no idea. What's the economy going to be like? I don't know. The problem that I see with House Bill 581 is how it treats the school systems differently than other local governments in Georgia. They're not treated the same. Local governments don't have to pay a fair share in order to get money from the state. Think about it. 5 mils of your tax money goes to the state. It doesn't come to our county. Your input in the last couple of weeks has really helped guide us, every one of you, whether you're for opting in or you're for opting out. I want to thank you for that engagement and your commitment to the community. I personally will spend this afternoon, as I've spent the last couple of weeks, thinking about what is best for our community. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Ms. Burnett?
I just would like to thank everyone who's come out today and to prior hearings. I appreciate the conversations that I've had with folks, either through email or phone calls or other methods. And I want you to know that your opinion, your thoughts, your perspective is valued, and I appreciate you taking the time to come and share it with us. Thank you.
Mr. Copeland.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Glover. I will just, I guess, echo my fellow board members more closely to Ms. Barnett. I really appreciate y'all coming out, being a part of the process. You know, for me, whenever we go and speak with civics classes at schools, I tell the students in there, you know, look at me and whoever may be there with us, we affect you probably more than anybody else does. And so the fact that we had this much community involvement, we welcome that. We hope we get to see you again. I know I saw some new faces out here and hope we get to see you some more often. We're always able to be reached, whether by email, phone, in person, whatever. And then I too will take the afternoon, the remainder of the afternoon, to kind of get my thoughts together. And I'm sure I'll speak again this evening on it. But again, thank you all for being here, for being a part of the process.
Again, thank everyone for being here. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0. We're adjourned. Thank you.